Does your company have a good wellness program? See how it stacks up against the healthiest employers of Indiana and across the country. Visit us online at healthiestemployers.com to join the community and start your application today.
When I think about the NCAA tournament, the first thing I think of is, of course, the Final Four.
He's a big-time college basketball referee who calls Indianapolis home. But Bo Boroski's love affair with sports started as a youngster on the baseball diamonds of Georgia, where he says he grew up a self-described baseball nut. So what led him to trade in the bat and glove for a whistle and striped shirt? We'll find out as we talk with one of the country's best-known and most visible NCAA basketball referees, Bo Boroski, on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Bo Boroski was born just 50 miles south of New York City in Freehold, New Jersey. He moved to South Georgia in the third grade. Dad made a living in the food business, Mom a nurse, and sports, well, that was the center of the family's universe. Bo says it ruled their lives and ultimately led him to a career in athletics. He played minor league baseball briefly in Lafayette before reality set in. He was not going to make it to the majors. So he went after his first real job as a security guard at Visionland Amusement Park in Alabama. After that, he returned to the ballpark, serving as an assistant baseball coach at St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, before eventually finding his way to Indianapolis, where he got his start as a basketball official. And I am pleased to be joined on the Business and Beyond podcast by Indianapolis's own Bo Boroski. Bo, thanks for joining us.
Gary, glad to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we're in June now. Is this a downtime for you, kind of a chance to catch your breath because you are on the move in basketball season?
In short, the answer to that, yes. Fortunately for me, May through October don't carry the stresses of the winter months, but it's certainly a downturn, an opportunity for me to reintroduce myself to the family for sure.
How many games do you do? I mean, I'm a big sports fan. I've got the tube on all the time, and I see you a lot. Big Ten, ACC, Big East. You're at all the big games. How many games do you do? Tell me what your travel schedule is like during the basketball season.
Well, obviously, this past season was atypical, but in a normal year, it would be somewhere between 80 and 90 total assignments. Now that includes the 2-week exhibition period. That includes, postseason conference tournament assignments, NIT, NCAA. That number has been consistent for me for a number of years. This past year, I'm not even sure what the number is. It was somewhere around 55 to 60, if I'm not mistaken.
So that's a pretty good number given the pandemic, I guess.
It is. Matter of fact, 4th of July weekend last year, I was still holding on the hope that schools would be open, and when I say schools, I mean universities, and that I knew if they were closed, we weren't playing. So the first step was not, are we playing? The first step was, are the schools open? And there was a few voices out there very positive on, we're coming back to school, we're coming back to campus. And we got a little bit of rumblings that there could be some trouble on the horizon in the football world, which obviously is in the fall. And I knew that it'd be a lot easier for them to, quote unquote, cancel basketball if they canceled football. So when we heard some rumblings, it was 4th of July weekend. I turned to my wife and I said, we may be in trouble here. And fortunately, she's not the stay-at-home type. So she was ready to re-engage the workforce.
Yeah. Big games, big conferences, big arenas. Talk about that and what that is like. You obviously love it. You have a passion for it. We're going to talk about your selection multiple times now as a Final Four official, which is, I guess, the peak of your profession. Do you have a favorite conference or a place you really like to officiate?
Two separate questions, really. The favorite conference, no. I think the way people don't have a full understanding. They may look at me and say, well, he's a Big Ten official. And,
Right.
they'll walk up to me at Butler, which is a Big East institution, and they'll go, well, you're a Big Ten official. Well, no, I'm not. I'm I'm at Butler tonight. I'm a Big East official. So in short, we're independent contractors. And if I go work a game at Ball State, I work in the MAC that night. If I'm at Butler, I'm in the Big East, and so on. Venues wise, being from Indiana, people think it's kind of a typical answer, but between Butler, Purdue, and Indiana, I'm not sure there's a 1-2-3 punch in any state in this country like those three. So I get asked this a lot, Gary. Those three are in my top 5. I always put Wichita State in there. It's what we in the officiating business call a mini Mackey. Loud, metal, students. I mean, it's intense. It doesn't matter if Wichita State is 22-2 or 2-22. There's 10,000 fans ready to go at Wichita State, and of course, my number one. You said it on the intro, is Madison Square Garden. That was the only. This is not the right word, but I'll say it. The only sad thing for me this year was I didn't get to work at the Garden. But it was also true for Hinkle. I wasn't able to work at Hinkle until the NCAA tournament, and I was able to check that box. But so those are my 5 venues, and they've been pretty consistent for a long time.
Yeah, and you like it. I said you like it. Is there a special, just like an athlete gets fired up to be on the big stage, being in those venues, be it a Madison Square Garden or a Mackey or Assembly Hall, Hinkle, whatever the case might be, does that give you a little extra juice?
Oh, yeah. There's no question about it. I get excited for each and every game, but you take Mackey Arena, for example. You walk in that venue, you've got the paint crew, which is, I don't know how they would come up with what's the best and what's the worst, but if they're not the best student section around, I'd be shocked. Intense, engaged, ready to go. And when you walk out on that court, the officials a lot of times are the object of their affection. So it just comes with the territory. And I would say 99.9% of whether it's at Mackey or any other institution, they stay within the parameters. They keep it light and keep it fun. But to be a middle-aged man and walk out and have the hair on the back of your neck stand up, I mean, what else could you do to have that feeling? That that's where I'm not in tune with the 8 to 5. I just can't do it. So yeah, you get fired up walking out at Assembly Hall. I've done a couple ACC Big Ten challenges at IU where they've played North Carolina. One year they were coming. The Cubs were coming off a World Series victory. They brought Kyle Schwarber back. The place was a circus. I'm not sure I've ever been in an environment where the players simply didn't react or respond to our whistles. A couple times we had to reach out and say, stop playing. And then the Garden, of course, has, deep roots for me. A lot of my family is still back east, and the Garden was just that unobtainable place for me coming up as a kid. It was that place that I never got to go to, but I knew was there. It was something that other kids got to do. I didn't. And now I get to. So it's got that special meaning for me.
Yeah, sure. It's part of being an official. How do you deal with the fans, especially the student sections? The hecklers, the boos, the back and forth. Is there a process? Is that part of the officiating game? Kind of managing that or dealing with that?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I do think there's parameters. There are lines that can be crossed, but I don't mind that fan engagement. I'm very careful about what I say, and more importantly, what I don't say. More often than not, they're yelling at the shirt. They're yelling at the stripes. They're not yelling specifically at me. Now, if they knew me personally, that would give them more reason to scream at me, maybe. But I get it. I understand it. I know the emotion attached to it. But at places in the Big Ten, the Big East, all the conferences you mentioned, there are things in place, high levels of security, game management. Officials do not need to engage directly with people. If there's an issue. There's things in place to ensure that everything, kind of stays where it needs to.
Okay, coaches. coaches have a tendency to get a bit perturbed, let's say, on
Yeah.
a call or two. Any dust up with a coach, or any situations with a coach that stand out to you over the course of your career? Any big blow ups?
I mean, there's been some for sure. The biggest thing that surprises me about what you're referencing with blow-ups with coaches is the reset that occurs. So I have a very vivid memory of ejecting a coach. I'll stay away from naming the teams and the coach, but I have very vivid memories. Many years ago, I ejected a coach, and 10 days later, I was going to see that same coach again. And of course, it was on my mind. I knew my mindset was, the right thing to do from my perspective as the official, from his perspective as the coach. And in fairness to the players, that's in the past. The reset button gets hit. I knew that was my mindset. I was mature enough to just say, okay, we crossed that bridge. It's behind us. Now what? Now what? And I was very pleased to see that he had the same mindset, where it was like, hey, good to see you. I apologize for the way I acted. I was in the moment. I was fighting for my kids. It wasn't directed at you. It wasn't directed at your crew. It was the moment. And I'm empathetic to that. I get it. And I think officials have to have that sort of empathy in order to be successful on the court.
Any coach out there whose persona that people see on TV or at a game is really different than the person is off the court?
I don't get to know these coaches a lot off the court, but I can tell you that, and I'm not afraid to say that some of my favorite coaches are those type A, aggressive type characters. What you see is what you get. You don't have to worry about, them calling the office and saying, official A was mean to me or said something that I didn't appreciate, or they say it right there. You have that sort of engagement, and they may say some things that are a bit, we'll use the word aggressive, but they want that sort of engagement to see how you respond, see how you react if you take it personally. And those coaches you reference that are inject themselves in the game, those are my favorite guys. Period.
Yeah, you grew up a sports nut. You played sports. You loved sports, and that was a really big part of your family growing up, right?
Yeah, it was. It's amazing the perspective that looking back provides. I didn't realize how intertwined our whole family was in sports. But if you look at least in my situation, my parents' friends were my teammates' parents, and we did everything together athletically. We did everything, together, whether it was in a church setting, we did everything socially. And it really made it hard when that aspect of our life ended, the high school piece, because as you know, once you graduate high school, everybody goes in different directions. Most people don't get involved in collegiate sports. That dynamic ends. And I think it was just as hard on me as it was my parents, because they had to rediscover what was important to them, because for 15, 18 years, that was all they knew. So to say it was the center of our universe is not an embellishment. It's accurate. And it's just, I think, something that we still look back on today, and we kind of have those remember when moments.
Well, you did play sports though in college. Talk about your path, because you started it had a couple transfers in playing baseball, right?
Yeah, I played baseball at UAB, where I earned my degree. I went, as you mentioned, I went three different ways. I started out in an NAI school in Georgia. Couldn't find my book bag. Had no concept. I was always told growing up, when you go to college, you don't have to go to class. And I was like, great. So it was really fun being on academic probation after my first semester and academic suspension after my second one. I think that's something that I will never forget, and certainly my parents won't. My mother was disappointed. Our son just failed out of school. And my dad said, we send you to college for two reasons. One, getting an education. Two, to have fun. You did not get an education. You had fun. So he looked at it as a success. But I did a reset, came back home, went to junior college, and the NCAA at that time, and who knows what the rules are now, but they had something called the 4-2-4 rule. When you go to a 4-year, come back to a 2-year, in order to go back to a 4, you have to graduate from the 2. And that's what I did. And I had a good baseball career at UAB.
It sounds like your folks, dad in the food service business, mom a registered nurse, that they were certainly big influences on your life.
Oh, they were. And, one of the vivid memories I have, baseball was huge in South Georgia. Now, keep in mind, it was the opposite season of football, thank goodness. But baseball was big. We had a good team, not a great team, but there were 4 or 5 core seniors that were together our entire high school career. And I'll never forget, we grew up very modest, especially financially. My dad was offered a job at the time under the Steak and Shake umbrella. I remember having conversations about it. And he was to go to Florida. I think it was for 3 months for training. And then when he came out, he would have this big job, double his salary. And the bottom line was he would have missed February, March, and April of my senior season. He said no. And he kept grinding. I mean, my dad was up at 5 a.m., hitting the road, meeting clients and customers, would drive 7-8 hours a day. That's where my work ethic comes from. But the whole family dynamic and the role it played in our everyday lives revolved around sports, and money just didn't matter. As long as we had enough money to buy a glove, the required uniforms, we thought we were rich.
So after graduation, you knew you wanted a career in sports, I think, right? You knew that was your passion. You wanted to pursue that, but you started out as a security guard. Tell me about that.
Well, I did. That was my first post-college job. And in Birmingham, it opened a place called Visionland. It was kind of a poor man's Six Flags. And my buddy, who was in the same situation, he had 6 knee surgeries, played football at UAB. And he said, hey, they're hiring. They're hiring security guards at Visionland. And I didn't look at this as an opportunity to start my career. I looked at this as an opportunity not to get a job. I mean, I was thinking I'd just walk around all day and no problem. So I probably did it, Gary, for 2 to 3 weeks. I think we got in trouble on a multitude of occasions for going across the radio, talking about meeting for lunch and where we were going after we got off. And we had some military guys that were in charge, and they were just like, this isn't working. And we agreed. And so that was my first crack at it. But shortly thereafter, I got a call that really set my professional life, in motion.
Well, tell me about that call and how it led you ultimately to Indiana and a career in officiating.
So I played a summer of baseball in a independent professional baseball league, and it was called the Heartland League. And one of the teams was in Lafayette, Indiana. And I had been referred to a gentleman by the name of Jason Tallman, who has deep roots in Indiana, played college baseball at St. Joe up in Rensselaer, unfortunately now closed. And he and I became fast friends. And this was a guy that was connected to everything and everybody, and was the kindest, still is. A great family, live in Fishers. We got to know each other, and he found out about my affinity for officiating, and he said, hey, let me introduce you to this gentleman, Eric Harmon. And you may know the name, former Big Ten official, worked many years, very successful insurance agent, Lafayette area to this day. And I got connected with Eric and started going to officiating camps. And then, of course, Jason introduced me. He knew I wanted to be in sports. He was involved as a baseball director on the northwest side of Indy with a place called the Sports Zone. They were looking for a basketball, volleyball, fitness director. He got me that job. So it was just this snowball effect, all from Jason Tallman. He's been unbelievable. We're still in touch. We probably don't spend as much time together as either one of us would like, but that's just networking 101. I put myself next to this guy that literally knew everybody.
How did you work your way through the ranks, if you will, in the officiating ranks to get to the level you're at now? How long did it take, and how did you start out? Was it high school games? How did it start?
When I was in Birmingham, I loved to officiate even at that time. Even as a kid, I was an 8-year-old officiating 6-year-old soccer games before my 10 a.m. soccer game. And I did that in multiple sports all the way through probably middle school, junior high. And so I always had the bug inside of me. My dad was an umpire in the Air Force when he was stationed in Germany. So he was, that's where the DNA came from, I think, originally. And of course, officiating at any sport at any level was something you did when you were done playing. Well, in my mind, I was never going to be done playing because I've had a huge career in some sport, and that never came, obviously. So it was in my DNA for a long time. I was doing middle school and junior high games when I was in college. And then when I got connected with Eric Harmon, I'm 22 years old. I get hired in a small college NAIA league here in the state of Indiana. So I was working, there was several situations where I was working games. There was a couple players older than I was. And I remember thinking how bizarre that was. And I still had some pimples, and I didn't have the full understanding of that this could be more than a hobby. And as time went on, I got some opportunities very early on in lower Division I leagues and had some success, worked some postseason. And of course, that just snowballed as well. So it was the whole, good luck and hard work combining to get some opportunities.
Okay, Bo, each week on the podcast, we do what we call a 2-minute drill, which is a few quick questions I'll ask you, and what's your quick response to them. Are you up for it?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go with the 2-minute drill. Favorite sports movie?
Favorite sport, Field of Dreams, hands down.
Oh, that's a good one. Single class or class basketball?
Oh, single class.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on that. Favorite way to relax? How do you relax?
Front porch at the lake, kids with a babysitter.
Perfect. Favorite or most important mentor, other than your family, your most important mentor?
That's a long list. I'm afraid to exclude a lot of people, but the name on the top of my head is Jeff Rubenstein. He checks all the boxes for me, personally, professionally. Good man, good family. So Jeff Rubenstein, Golf Club Indiana, hands down.
Golf Club of Indiana, very good. Okay, this may be a challenging one. Is there a most creative chant that students have directed at you?
Well, what is this rated? Is this rated PG? Are we?
No, we're good. We're wide open.
There's really, this ref sucks is the most, or they could say your name, or these guys are blind. There's not a chant per se that sticks out, but they do get a little bit creative. But it's not a situation where one is more popular than the other. I think it's based on the venue.
Gotcha. Okay, final question. If you had the ultimate dinner, you had 3 dinner guests you wanted to invite for that ultimate dinner, who would your, again, non-family, who would those guests be? 3 guests at dinner.
Number 1 is easy. I didn't even have to think about it. It's Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. So I went to high school in 1993. I was a grunge kid. I could do everything but play the guitar. So Eddie Vedder is the top of the list. Number 2 on that list would be, my grandfather on my dad's side. I never got to meet him. Seen pictures, seen a couple videos, can't get through them, but would love to find out more about my dad from his dad. Number 3, boy, this is going to make some people mad, but I've got some very liberal positions socially and some very conservative positions financially. And so I would love to sit with Ronald Reagan and say, how did you get everybody on the same page, at least perceptually? So those are the 3 guys I'd like to sit down and chit chat with.
That would be a cool table indeed. Well, we're going to have much more with Bo Boroski, including reaching the pinnacle of officiating, the Final Four, being selected to work the Final Four, and Bo the entrepreneur. That's when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
The Healthiest Employers Award program is now open to companies of all sizes in the state of Indiana. We have created a community of wellness leaders from across the country dedicated to cultivating a more proactive approach to employee health and well-being. To nominate your organization, visit us online at healthiestemployers.com. Healthiest Employers, the nation's leading corporate well-being award.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is NCAA referee Bo Boroski. And Bo, talked a lot about your officiating career thus far in the podcast. The Final Four. That's got to be the pinnacle for an NCAA official to be selected for the Final Four. Was your first Final Four, was that in 2019?
2019, yes, Minneapolis. It's bizarre. I get to say I worked back-to-back Final Fours in 2019 and 2021. So,
yeah. What was it like getting the call? Or how were you notified and you found out that you indeed were going to work a Final Four?
Yeah, two different ways. One being in the pandemic, of course. But the first one, everybody knew that you got a phone call between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. on the Monday following the Elite Eight. That was true in 2019. So it got to be about 2:55, p.m. And I'm sitting there going, all right, well, everybody else gets the email that says thanks, but no thanks. So I started hitting refresh about 2:55 and the phone rang. It was a very emotional conversation. I got a call from the national coordinator. He basically started it by saying, I know you're excited. I know you're emotional. So I'm going to talk for 2 minutes about some boilerplate things I've got to tell you, and then we'll have a conversation. And I hung up the phone, walked inside, and, my wife was just as excited, as I was. She knows what it means, to me and the family.
Yeah. Talk about the emotions, because it had to be the culmination of a lot of things that really boiled down when you received the word.
Yeah, it's something that officials don't actively talk about. It's that dream, it's that vision that all officials have, regardless of what level you're currently working. And I don't think bad luck's the right word, but it's a situation where we just, work each game. If you're fortunate enough to move on, when you look at the NCAA tournament, it's 100 officials coming out of a pool of somewhere between 1,100 and 1,200. So
Wow.
Already, you're in the top 8%, at least perceptually, or in the opinion of the people that matter. And to advance to a regional round, now you're in that top 3%. And to be in the Final Four, it's odds are you're not going to get it. You're not going to make it. It's less than 1%. So to be in that mix twice, it is very emotional, because my kids go through it too. It's, I'm the one, 94 by 50, but they're the ones being left home alone. They're the ones that have to fend for themselves when, daddy's out running around airport to airport, hotel to hotel.
Yeah. Okay. This year's Final Four and March Madness, unique to say the least. First of all, Indianapolis, a few games in Bloomington, a few games in Lafayette, but Indianapolis essentially hosting the entirety of March Madness. I think it was an incredible feat that they pulled it off. What were your thoughts on that?
I loved it. I wish they'd sign it into law. Let's do it again. I hung on very early, and I referenced earlier in the call, I was hanging on to a few people making some positive statements last summer. And, Mitch Daniels from Purdue was one of those guys that came out and said, listen, there's risk associated with this, but we understand them. We're going to try and mitigate them, and we're going to see you in August back on campus. And I just thought that was so bold. And my group, call it a dozen people or less. Did you read this? Did you see this? Did you see what Mitch Daniels? I was promoting what I wanted the message to be, and and that was followed by Dan Gavitt, who's responsible for men's basketball, and for him to come out and make the statement, we will, if they're playing basketball anywhere on this planet, we will have an NCAA tournament, and it picked up some momentum, and it gave people hope, and it just, I think, from my perspective, messaging is very important. And I decided to ignore about 95% of the pundits and listen to literally those two individuals for Danny and his team to land on this model. It's so easy now to say, all right, let's have the whole NCAA tournament in Indy. We'll book up all the hotel rooms. We'll get the buses. We'll test everybody and we'll have a tournament. Well, looking back on it, you think, oh, yeah, that made sense. But can you imagine the logistics involved? I still can't believe that it happened. I still can't believe they pulled it off. And, I know we had a team and we had an official that got caught up in the contact tracing. Some tested positive. But my understanding is maybe that didn't even occur in Indianapolis. It could have occurred prior. So for them to keep everybody safe, to have a successful tournament, to be able to distribute the funds associated with that television contract to all the member institutions, I don't think it gets talked about enough. And I certainly know they'll never get the credit that they deserve.
Yeah, that's a great point. Really great point. Talk about the Final Four and what it was like for you and your fellow officials, because you were essentially, in a sense, quarantined. I mean, you were locked down, right, for the week. What was Final Four week like?
So we were in the Le Méridien Hotel for the whole for the Big Ten tournament. So that was true for, I think the number was 8 of us, and then we just stayed at the Le Méridien for the first week leading up to the tournament, and then the next 2 weeks through the regionals. So we were at the Le Méridien, and listen, we were confined. We couldn't go outside. But let me reiterate, we were at the Le Méridien. Okay, yeah. We weren't at a Roach Motel out on Highway 22. We were comfortable. They fed us 3 meals a day. The bar was open. We could talk to each other, albeit we had the Connexon devices to social distance. The hardest thing for me was not being around my kids, not seeing my wife. That was literally the only difficult thing. We were taken care of. We had a fitness center. We had flats. I had the golf channel. I was happy. I don't think anybody felt sorry. Like, geez, Bo, you're in the Le Méridien for 3 weeks. How do you do it? Well, I'd like to try it again, and I'll take more notes. But then they transferred us to the JW, where they housed all 4 of the teams, all the administrators associated with those schools, the coaches, of course, support staff. So they transferred the 11 officials, 9 working officials and 2 alternates over to the JW. Again, in a bus all at once. We tested upon entry. We tested every day. And again, just another great situation. I'm not sure we're going to get much pity for staying for, I think it was 8 days at the JW.
Yeah. Want to talk about your entrepreneurial ventures before we end here, Bo, but I want to ask you a question. I'm curious your take on this, because you look at the Indiana High School Athletic Association, and they're certainly not alone. I think this is a national trend. They're finding it difficult to get referees, to find referees. And you see increasingly the instances of parents in youth sports, going crazy, and maybe that contributes to it, and folks not wanting to get into officiating. What's your take on that, and kind of the future of officiating and getting good quality people into the profession?
I could talk for a really long time on those questions. I'll summarize the best I can. The recruitment and retention of sports officials is essential. Without officials, there's no contest. And I think one of the issues we're dealing with now, and when I say we, officials in the most general sense, it's not attractive. There's not major financial gain. The benefits of getting some exercise don't outweigh the torment from parents and coaches. And when I talk about parents and coaches, primarily, I'm talking about at the middle school, junior high, and high school levels. It's the accountability piece, I would say, is pretty low. And I think what we need in the officiating world to increase recruitment and, of course, retention is to get the officials to care more about their craft, and to get the other people involved, the players, the parents, the coaches, the administrators, to color within the lines a little bit. And I think it's a two-way street. I don't think you can just look at the officials and say, you guys are terrible, you have to get better, and just expect it to happen overnight. We have to put things in place to get them to care about it, to create a social network for them to want to stay involved. Most people that get licensed, they're only in 15 months. They get a taste of it for a season or two, and they're like, I'm not doing this. We've partnered. RefQuest has partnered with a company called Officially Human. It's a woman-owned business out of Chicago, and it's about restoring respect to officials. And they're signing clients at different levels throughout the country, just trying to get people to understand and realize that officials are not a necessary evil. We're there to complement the game, because without us, you're not playing. And we've seen it in the state of Indiana. Football games getting canceled, other sports getting canceled. I've got a call. I'm a supervisor of officials for a small college league here in the Midwest. I got a call from my commissioner and said, Bo, can you send an email to all of your basketball officials to see if anybody wants to officiate soccer? We've got matches coming up in 2 weeks. We do not have officials. So it's not just middle school, CYO, high school. It's at the small college level. And we have got to build that pool. And we've got, have the approach of high tide raises all boats. We've got to teach and train and collaborate and engage and get these people around each other. They'll become lifelong friends. They'll push each other. They'll go to camps together. They'll discuss officiating rather than other officials. They'll discuss officiating rather than the issues they had at XYZ high school last night. That's what we want. So the recruitment and retention is the core, but it's how do you do it? And I think we need a technology solution, and I think RefQuest provides that, or at least has up to this point.
Yeah, well, let's talk about RefQuest, because that's that entrepreneurial venture. It's your business, right? You started a few years ago. Talk about why you did it and how it's going.
Yeah, we started in 2018. It was the response to the question of, is there a better way? Anybody in a leadership role was finding that they needed 5 or 6 different officiating related solutions. And we look to put all of those solutions under one umbrella. And so the core value is end-to-end officiating services and ease of use. So anytime from a programming standpoint, we always talk actively in our standing meetings that we want to build this toward the bottom 10% of computer competency. And sometimes the programmers say, well, it's obvious, it's evident. Well, it is to you. But let's keep in mind that a lot of our high school officials are an aging population, and they may not even know how to turn the computer on. So if this should only take 4 steps, let's take 7 steps and make it very clear. So that's been one of the biggest magnets for us in terms of engaging the platform, is the ease of use. So we offer everything, end-to-end officiating services. We've got the collaboration piece for teaching and training. We've got the assigning piece. We've got the payment piece. We've got the culture, what we call RQ culture, where we have, our philanthropic efforts, where we have our partnership with Officially Human, where we talk about humanizing and restoring respect for officials. And we have a diversity initiative called Pipeline Go, where we try and get underrepresented groups involved in officiating in the pipeline early. We want to remove financial barriers. We want to remove anything that prevents them from putting the stripes on. And that's what we work to do with Pipeline Go.
What's next for Bo Boroski? Bo, what? Obviously, you're at the peak of your game right now. Do you look to continue that? What's next?
Well, the future's unwritten, and I'm going to leave it that way. I know for a lot of people, officiating is the next to the last or the last chapter of their lives. I've got young kids. That's not going to be the case for me. I'm really looking to grow and expand RefQuest. We've had great success up to this point. The scale is infinity, and we could even end up being outside of the sports official space. The way that this company is set up, that we could scale in the municipalities and different government entities for used as a platform for teaching and training for any field. So I'm excited about that. It gets me out of bed, keeps me up, and of course I'm looking forward to October, November to getting back on the court. I'm extremely motivated every day to officiate and to push RQ Plus. And if I knew what the future was, I would find life boring.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure you're looking forward to having some full arenas next season as well, right?
I want the fans back in a big, big way. We missed them big time this year. I think it took everybody a little bit of time to get used to, a silent arena. They piped in some fan noise, but it was artificial.
Yeah, very good. Bo Boroski, it's been a real treat to have you on the podcast. Appreciate you taking the time to join us. I've enjoyed watching you on the court, your success, and look forward to following you in the years ahead. Thanks very much, Bo.
Gary, I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. It's a weekly conversation with leaders in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can check out all of our episodes. Also, get Indiana Business News 24/7 at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. We'll see you next time.